Welcome to Inside British Royals. This is your exclusive look inside the world's most famous family. We are exploring the scandals, secrets, and power plays that define the modern monarchy. If you are new here, please do well to hit that subscribe button for more updates. For generations, the British monarchy had a simple, unwritten rule: protect the family to protect the institution. But that rule has just been shattered. King Charles III has done the unthinkable. In a move that no one saw coming, he has publicly sacrificed his own brother. This wasn't some quiet family disagreement hidden behind palace walls. This was a cold, calculated, public takedown of a royal career, broadcast for the entire world to see. For the first time ever, a king has chosen the law over his own blood. With a single statement, he signaled that to save the crown, absolutely no one is safe. This is the story of how King Charles abandoned Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and why this one ruthless decision will define his entire reign. The end came fast, on what should have been a day of celebration. On the morning of his 66th birthday, February 18, 2026, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested at his home on the Sandringham estate. And the charge wasn't some minor slip-up. He was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, a crime so serious it strikes at the very heart of his old life and carries a potential sentence of life in prison. As the news broke, the world held its breath, waiting for the usual palace statement, a carefully worded message of support, or maybe a plea for privacy. What came instead was a political earthquake. King Charles III issued a statement so direct, so lacking in family comfort, that it left no doubt about the new world order. The king said he learned the news with the deepest concern, but then came the hammer blow. He declared that what must follow is a full, fair, and proper process by the appropriate authorities. And then came the line that cut the final tie. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course. This wasn't a defense. This was Charles washing his hands of his own brother. In that moment, the king chose to be a head of state, not the head of his family. He put a clear, deliberate wall between the crown and the man who used to be Prince Andrew. The message couldn't be clearer: you're on your own. The palace had already hinted it was ready to cooperate with police, saying the allegations were for Mr. Mountbatten Windsor to address. But the king's personal statement was the final, brutal confirmation of his brother's total exile. This shocking end was actually decades in the making. It was a slow-motion catastrophe built on arrogance, entitlement, and a truly disastrous choice of friends. You can't tell the story of Andrew's downfall without saying the name Jeffrey Epstein. Their friendship, which started back in the 90s, had the prince flying on Epstein's private jet and staying at his homes, even after Epstein became a convicted sex offender. Andrew's decision to visit Epstein in New York in 2010, right after the financier got out of jail for soliciting a minor, was an act of loyalty so stupid it would eventually cost him everything. For years, the rumors swirled. But the real beginning of the end was that infamous BBC Newsnight interview in November 2019. In a desperate bid to clear his name, Andrew sat down and gave what might be the worst interview in television history. His bizarre excuses, his total lack of empathy for Epstein's victims, and his claim that hanging out with Epstein had been useful created a firestorm of public disgust. He was forced to step back from public duties, but the crisis was far from over. The most damaging claims came from Virginia Giuffre, who alleged in U.S. courts that she was forced to have sex with Andrew 3 times when she was just 17. After a long legal fight, Andrew settled the lawsuit in March 2022 for a reported $16 million, all while admitting nothing. He thought the money would buy silence, but it only made him look more guilty. The tragedy took a darker turn in April 2025, when Virginia Giuffre died by suicide. Her story was told in a posthumous memoir released months later, which kept the scandal burning in the public eye. And even then, more kept coming out. In October 2025, emails were released showing Andrew had stayed in touch with Epstein into 2011, directly contradicting his claim that he'd cut ties in 2010. He was even sending Epstein Christmas cards. Every new revelation was another crack in the palace wall, and another reason for the king to believe the rot was just too deep to ignore. For King Charles, the arrest on February 18th wasn't a sudden crisis. It was the final, predictable move in a game he'd been managing for years. His response wasn't panic. It was cold, calculated strategy. He wasn't just reacting to his brother's arrest. He had been actively preparing for it by systematically dismantling his brother's royal identity to protect the monarchy from the storm he knew was coming. This was a long-planned sacrifice. The first big move came in October 2025. In a series of official decrees, King Charles did something unprecedented. He stripped his brother of everything that made him royal. The title of prince was gone. The cherished His Royal Highness was revoked. The Dukedom of York, a title held by sons of monarchs for centuries, was dissolved. He was no longer a prince of the United Kingdom. He was just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a private citizen. At the same time, he was forced out of his massive home, Royal Lodge at Windsor, and moved to a smaller, privately funded house at Sandringham. This was more than just punishment. It was a deliberate rebranding. Charles was turning his brother from a royal problem into a private legal matter. By the time the arrest happened, the palace could say, with technical accuracy, that this was a problem for Mr. Mountbatten Windsor to address. The king had spent over a year drawing a line in the sand, making sure that when the final blow landed, the damage would be contained to just one man, not the entire institution. This strategy is a huge break from royal history. For centuries, the firm operated on a code of silence and protection. Problems were managed, scandals were buried, and family members, no matter how much trouble they caused, were shielded from real-world consequences. But Charles has learned the brutal lesson of the 21st century. In an age of social media and shrinking deference, with the king basically giving the green light for the law to take its course, the full weight of the justice system is now coming down on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And the charges he's facing are far more serious than anyone imagined. The arrest was reportedly triggered by the release of millions of documents from the Epstein files by the U.S. Justice Department on January 30th, 2026. And buried in those files were email exchanges that allegedly turned Andrew's scandal from a personal disgrace into a matter of national security. According to these documents, while he was serving as Britain's official trade envoy, Andrew was forwarding confidential government reports directly to Jeffrey Epstein. In one case, a sensitive report from his 2010 visits to Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Singapore was allegedly sent to Epstein just minutes after Andrew got it from his own advisor. In another, he is said to have shared what he called a confidential brief on investment opportunities in Afghanistan, at a time when British troops were fighting there. This is the basis for that charge of misconduct in public office, an offense so severe in British law, it carries a maximum sentence of life. A team of at least 7 police officers is now handling the investigation, which also reportedly includes looking into claims that Andrew was involved in trafficking a woman to the UK for a sexual encounter. The man who was once fourth in line to the throne is now facing a future not in a palace, but in a courtroom, and maybe even a prison cell. In the eyes of the law, he's just a regular citizen, stripped of the titles, status, and family protection he took for granted his entire life. King Charles has made his move. By sacrificing his brother, he has made a ruthless bet that a smaller, more accountable, and more brutal monarchy is the only kind that can survive in the modern world. The arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is more than just one man's downfall. It's a defining moment for the reign of King Charles III. It's the final act in a deliberate, long-term strategy to cut a cancerous growth out of the monarchy, no matter how painful the surgery. Charles has shown, in the clearest way possible, that the institution is all that matters. Family, history, the bonds of blood, all of it comes second to the primary goal, survival. He's proving to be not just a modernizer, but a pragmatist so ruthless he was willing to throw his own brother to the wolves. The age of protecting the family to protect the crown is over. Now, it seems, the crown must be protected from the family. What do you think of the king's decision? Was it a necessary act for the monarchy's survival, or a cold-hearted betrayal of his own family? Let us know in the comments below.